thanks for listening to the Adulting is Easy podcast, where we make adulting easier by making money easier. This is your host, Lauren. And we're today by Tony Lopes, first generation American, CEO of Dirty Boots Capital, real estate professional, best-selling author, coach, and speaker. He earned a BS in mechanical engineering and an MBA from UMass. He worked in the defense industry for 19 years, managing multi-million dollar programs while simultaneously building a portfolio of residential income properties. His investments, coupled with his understanding of markets and economics, allowed him to retire at the age of 44. What really drives Tony, though, is sharing his knowledge and experience so that others can achieve financial independence and enjoy the same freedom he does. Thanks for joining me, Tony.
Thank you for having me on, Lauren. This is going to be a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to it. And our goal for today, as it always is on Adulting is Easy, is to make adulting easier for listeners by discussing a personal finance topic, since managing money is a huge part of adulting. Today, Tony, we're going to talk about a lot of things. I want to definitely talk about retiring by 44 or sooner. But I did want to ask this question to kick us off. And we just had, I guess, Chrissy on 2 episodes ago for 189, and she was an immigrant. And so I thought we might carry that theme here. And I would like to know, I heard you on a different podcast. I heard that you grew up an immigrant. How did that initially define your concept of success?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. Great place to start. So it was actually my parents who were immigrants. I'm first generation. So my parents were immigrants to this country, and right, they grew up overseas in a farming type community. Not a lot, not a lot around them. Not a lot of opportunities. So they saw tremendous opportunities here in this country. And as a young couple, to go to another country with no friends, knowing little of the language, it was just wow, the sacrifices they made, and the challenges they faced is just amazing when you look back at that time and place where we see a lot of people complaining about what we're experiencing today and how
Yeah.
hard things are. And I just try to calibrate them to, hey, imagine if you had to move to another country. You didn't know the language, the banking system, you didn't know housing, or there's so many things that would make life really hard. So we have to, kind of keep these things in check. So my parents were the immigrants. I'm first generation, but I grew up with a lot of the same values that they had. Right? We grew up very blue collar. Right? I didn't come from money. Um, but one of the things they shared, with me and my three other siblings was because they didn't have this. So they saw the value in the mantra they handed down of go to school, get a good education, you'll get a good job, and you'll be taken care of for life. Right? That's how they saw the world. And to a degree, back then, that was pretty much how it existed. But the rules have changed. I'm not even going to say the rules are changing. They've changed. Period. End of story. The rules of how we live and how we operate have changed, and we have to recalibrate ourselves to kind of this new world order that we're in.
So did you do it? Did you do the school job thing?
I did. I went to school. As you mentioned, I went to UMass. I got my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. So good degree, right? Landed a job. I went back to school during nights to get my master's degree in business, which I did. So here I am. I have two great degrees, business and engineering. I was flying high. I was like, wow, this is great. Yeah, I'm going to be taken care of for the rest of my life. I'm good until I wasn't, right? I was about 4 years in to working and starting my adult career, and I got laid off. And that was a real big slap in the face. And maybe some of your listeners can relate to all this, and that's why I like talking about it, because it's a very relatable story for even if you're an immigrant, if you're a first generation or even a second generation American, like a lot of these things you can resonate with because you probably got that mantra from your parents as well of go to school, get a good job, you'll be taken care of, right? You probably got that as well somewhere along the line. And so for me, and a lot of other folks, again, maybe some of your listeners, we've all gotten laid off along the way. And if you haven't experienced a layoff, it sucks. As you can imagine, right? I mean, I was laid off for 3 months. I wasn't financially independent, right, at the time. So, my
What
only ch
about we hear this concept in personal finance, FU money, right? Did you
yeah.
even have FU money? What'd you have going on?
Yeah, no, no, I had a mortgage, I had a car payment.
Oof, yeah.
So like a lot of folks, life, it's just life. It's nothing like, oh, I, had, you know, like tons of credit cards that need to be paid and nothing like that, but it was just like life things like, sure, I had to go out, buy groceries, I had to pay for my utilities, I had to pay for my mortgage, I had to pay for my car, putting gas in my car, and pay for my insurances, right? I didn't have FU money, and I didn't have anything extraordinary for like bills. I just had like regular everyday bills, and even at that, just and this is why I say the rules of the game have changed because even like with everyday bills, and we're seeing it today, if you have a good job, it's even hard to keep up today paying those everyday bills, even if you have a good job. And so this is where, we start to get into, having to these days do a little bit more than historically we've had to. One interesting statistic I do like to talk about is, we are coming into the first time in this country, in the United States, the first time where the next generation isn't going to have it as good as we've had it. And that's extremely sad. And we need
Yeah.
to understand that. People need to be talking about that to help calibrate our all of us to that to be able to achieve more in our lives and not just, go home after work, sit on the couch, eat a bag of potato chips and, expect, goodness to walk through the front door. It doesn't happen that way. We have to work harder these days to make ends meet. So,
Work harder and work hard earlier. Then
yeah.
you can eat. I think you can sit on the couch, you can eat a bag of potato chips, but you really gotta hustle hard for probably 10, 15 years. But if you do that, then you can have as many potato chips on the couch later.
Yeah.
Except for the health consequences of
Yeah.
decisions like that. But financially,
Yeah.
you could probably do it.
Absolutely. And you know what? Maybe some of those young people are doing that. The Pew's Research Center actually did a lot of research around like young people still living at home. And we are at a point in time where 53%, this is the highest number ever, 53% of 18-year-old to 29-year-old, that young people, that young person category, 18 to 29-year-olds, 53% are still living with their parents. That's
I
huge.
I have
And that's
cousins, so I'm flipping through that in my head. I thought you were gonna say 18 to 24.
yeah.
You would think when you get to the 25 to 29, they'd be bringing that below 50%, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, you would think. And
Yeah,
so all these things, I just cite to help people maybe have a moment like you just had of reflection
yeah,
and say, what do I see in my own life? Have I seen more people get laid off recently? It's happening. More layoffs are happening these days. What do I see with my friends and family? Who's living at home with their parents? Do I see more of that? And what did I experience growing up? Like when I was
yeah,
24, I was out of the house, right?
yeah.
I was living on my own and, making my own ends meet as a single person. Today, I do rentals just like you do rentals, and I see applications come across my desk, and there are very, very few single people that can afford an apartment on their single salary. What I see more of is I see couples, I see roommate situations, because today it's very difficult to afford a one-bedroom apartment on a single salary. So,
Or one person working two jobs I've seen too.
yeah.
I ended up becoming a landlord and investing in real estate because I'm very passionate about personal finance and building wealth. And I'm fascinated with the math equation that it is and the compounding and all of those things. And luckily, I became exposed to all of that in my 20s. So that's been really good for me as I approach 35 here. But I, I mean, it's changed Since I was, I mean, I bought my first house at 23. This was during the Great Recession, so it was like super cheap and I was able to do it. I worked at Toys R Us. I did have a roommate.
Yeah.
Um, but it's changed now. I mean, like I said, I'm the oldest cousin. I'm the oldest of cousin, including my siblings. There's 11 of us, and I'm the oldest. My sister's 21. I'm 35. And so there's a pretty good swath there. And it is so different for the younger ones than it was for me. And that's a really short amount of time, Tony, that things have changed.
It really is, and things aren't going back, right? Apartments aren't going back to be, $700 a month. It just isn't. Inflation isn't going away. High cost of insurance isn't going away. The affordability crisis isn't going away. It's here to stay. So we just have to recalibrate. I have some friends like who want to get into real estate, and they're like, oh, do you think there's going to be a big foreclosure crash in like 2008? And I'm like, no, I don't see that happening. Like if you want to do more, achieve more, do better for yourself, you have to recalibrate to what is today. And I
Yeah.
love this message that you're sharing of young people getting educated, getting started earlier, right? I mean, when I started, I was buying units at like $50,000 a unit. That isn't happening. We are not going back to that. So
Yeah.
we're still buying apartments, but we're buying apartments, at like 200K a unit. That's
Yeah.
just what it is today. If I was
Yep.
calibrated to, 15, 20 years ago of $50,000 a unit, if that was my where I wouldn't be buying today. So you have to operate in today's environment. Um, don't live in the past.
That's the hardest thing. And I hear it from people all the time. You buy a house and they're like, man, I can't believe you paid that much. 3 years ago, it was whatever. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, what is it going to be in 3 years from now? And I've been in the game long enough now. Like I just said, it's been 12 years since I bought my first house, which is, that sounds crazy in and of itself in my brain. But like, if I was not recalibrated from 12 years ago, I wouldn't have bought anything in the last few years. And so that's a good point. It's easier said than done though, because our brain likes to anchor us to old things and trick us and
Yeah.
all of those
Yeah.
things. But you make a good point where I think if people are looking at houses, and let's say the average house in your area is $500,000, and that may sound high to some people, may sound low to some people, but that's a number I'm going to use, and you're like, man, if only it was 300 like it was a few years ago, then blah, blah, blah. I'll just wait for that crash. And anybody that's bought a house in the last, I'm going to say 12 years, bought quite a few, knows it is not the same as 2008. I mean, the underwriting that they do, the questions that they ask, the questions that they ask your boss, the documents, I mean, that they require from you nowadays, there are not the unqualified buyers buying homes like there was back then. And with all of the low interest rates that people have, most people have these very low interest rates still. Sorry for all of you that are looking at sixes, like I just did when I bought my new house. But and there's equity out there. Even with the refinances that people did to get down to lower rates, they still were refinancing probably at 20% equity, and then everything's gone up. So it's not the same world. And I think people do this thing in their mind where they're like, high prices means bubble. And that's
Yeah.
just, that's just not how it works.
It isn't, and I love that you walked through that, and it's such a valuable perspective, Lauren, because one of the things I share with folks, and maybe some of your listeners, will find value in this. We love to share value, right? One of the things is to, if you want to achieve greatness in your life, like if there's a listener out there that wants to get into real estate or start a business or whatever it is, find somebody who's doing what you want to do, that you have a passion for, or you see as the way of achieving greater freedom, greater wealth, whatever it is. Find that person who's already doing it. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Go seek out Lauren, right? If you want to do real estate, she's very successful in real estate. So go give Lauren a call, right? I mean, and find out how she did it and find out her perspective. There's too many people out there who, and I know because I do real estate coaching and I come across them and I'm like, so you're like 50 years old. Why haven't you started yet? And it's like, and I hear the stories all too often is, well, my neighbor was, kind of warning me about this,
Yeah.
and my sister told me it was really high risk, and I'm like, so how many apartments does your neighbor own? How many
Right.
apartment buildings does your sister own? None. well, maybe you shouldn't be, and they're probably very nice people. I would probably love to have their sister as a neighbor, and they're probably very nice people, but they don't know the business. They don't know the macroeconomics behind it, to be able to really, really speak to it in terms of what's going on.
What I'm
So,
hearing lately, Tony, you tell
yeah.
me if you're hearing this too, is, but I can't do what you did because I'm not starting when you started. I've been doing this long enough where people are like, but it's not how it was when you started. And I'm like,
It
well,
was.
so what, you're just not going to listen to anybody? There's nobody for you to listen to now? Like, come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. It was the same thing back when you started, back when I started. I mean, it wasn't like, somebody just handed me a pile of cash to go invest. No, I had to save for
Yeah.
my down payment.
Yeah.
I had to with so my first deal, just to go back in the way back machine, it was no easier than it is today, right? I had bought a condo when I got out of college, so 4 years later, I was still living there. I got laid off. I had to make my mortgage payment somehow, but shortly thereafter, it took me 3 months to land a new job, and so shortly after landing a new job, I refinanced my condo to take some cash out because real estate appreciates over time. That's one of the beautiful things with real estate, right? Um, so I did a cash out refinance. My mortgage was higher after that cash out refinance, but the numbers still worked. I took that cash and invested in a 4 unit building, which I still own today. I still own today. And so, but my next deal, I didn't have the cash. I couldn't do a cash out refinance quite yet. So one of the things I did was I had to find that. I ended up taking money out of my, and I'm not saying this is right for everybody. Sometimes people slam me on this. It's not right for everybody. I did a loan against my 401k.
Hmm.
Okay. Which basically means, it's still my money. I'm just using it in a different way, and I'm paying myself
Hmm.
interest on that money that I'm borrowing for my 401k, right?
Right. So it's up to 50% of your 401k, up to $50,000 is the loan that you can take. It's quarterly payments that you have to pay yourself of 7-ish%.
Yeah.
And what I will say, what I didn't know about this until recently, and I must have missed it in my CFP courses at Boston University or something, right? But somehow I didn't know that you can't contribute to your 401k while you're doing that, right? So remember that if you have your 401k, you're taking a loan on it, you can't contribute to your 401k while you're paying your loan back. So you're foregoing like the match and some of those benefits of the
Yeah,
401k. So
that's
just a
interesting.
side note.
That's new. That must be new
Okay.
since
Okay.
I've done it, because and I did
And it
it like
maybe it's
eons ago.
plan specific. My
Oh,
husband
could
and
be.
we found a really good deal on this primary home, I think. Which I know it's primary, it's not about deals, but I can't help myself. And
I know.
we just had to have it. And we had a property for sale that just wasn't going to close in time to use that as the down payment. And so we were looking at all of the ways that we could source funds.
Yeah.
And one of the ways we were looking at was the 401ks. And that was how I don't have a 401k right now because I left my job a year ago and I can't borrow from it if I'm not there. That's how
Yeah.
my plan worked. And he's still there and he could not contribute while I was doing it. So it may be plan specific, but just a thought that I feel a little remiss because this is episode 192 and we've talked about 401k loans probably 50 times. I've never mentioned that before. So I just wanted to add that, Tony, but
No,
please, sorry to
but it,
interrupt.
no, it's all good stuff, because so plan specific. You got to go check out what your plan offers, what's
Hmm.
available. But what I'm getting at, it was no easier back when I or you were, and still are, investing in real estate, right? We have both done. I know because you had mentioned it earlier. We both done seller financing on properties that we bought, right?
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of a lift associated with doing seller financing. So there's also the creativity, of doing these deals today. It's not new. This has all existed for decades and decades. I didn't invent seller financing.
Nope.
It didn't just happen, in the last year. These things have existed for so long. So to think it's harder today, I think is a misnomer.
I mean,
Uh,
the concepts are the same. the metrics are the same. The numbers that you run are the same. They just might be a little, maybe a little bit bigger. I mean, certainly the
Yeah,
interest rate a little higher than it was 5 years ago, for example. Maybe the price point's a little higher. But I still think the best thing that people can do to get started is what I did in a sense. I bought a house, I moved a roommate in, and we call that house hacking now. But
yeah,
my payment was seven something. He was paying me five something. And I was making $28,000 a year as a front end department supervisor at Toys R Us at 23 years old, right?
yeah,
That sounds great. And you're like, wow, I wish I could do that. But like at the time,
yeah.
that was horrifyingly scary,
Scary.
right? I
Yeah,
mean, it was 2012. People, I mean, people didn't know if real estate was going to go cut in half again for all they knew,
yeah,
right? I mean, it was a terrifying time. It did not seem easy. Looking back, it's like, man, of course that was a really obvious decision. And
yeah,
so I think we've all been faced with that. And then when I went on to buy my 6 unit apartment building, it was $600,000. That was a lot of money at the time,
yeah,
$100,000 a unit. A lot of people weren't paying that, paying $50,000 a unit, for example,
yeah.
here and there.
It- I,
And
I,
it's like,
I
it never like, wow, that was really
It
obvious at the
it's
time,
it's
you
not
know?
luck, and I'm sure you get this too, Lauren.
Mm,
And so I want to make sure the listeners like fully grasp, right? Like it's not luck. I get too often, wow, you're so lucky, Tony. You're so lucky to be able to travel and be able to do different things. And I'm like, well, it's not luck. It certainly didn't feel like luck 20 years ago when I was doing my deals
no.
and I was the one property managing because to your
Yep.
point, we look at things today and it's like, oh, it's not cash flowing well. And it's like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. 20 years ago, it was tough to cash flow too, right?
Yeah.
Rents were not $2,000 for a two bedroom. They were like $800. And
Yeah.
I had to do all my own property management at that point, right?
Yeah.
That's how I got the cost down. I got the expenses down
Yep.
to be able to increase my income, right? So it wasn't easy back then. And so yeah.
No. The other thing I hear, Tony, a lot, I don't want to turn this into a ranting session, so this is the last thing I'll say, but is
But it's going so well.
well, I was thinking about investing in Pinellas County at the same time. I was looking at duplex at the same time. Like they're acting like as if it was so obvious that I was doing what I was doing at the time, but they're missing the point that they didn't do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, but I did it. That's a
Yeah.
big leap that we're
Yeah.
not
So
acknowledging.
So for folks who are struggling kind of making that first step or even the second or third step,
Yeah.
I think it's super important to network with people who have actually done it, right? Go to your real estate investor associations or the clubs in your area. That's a great way to meet other people who have done it, but also struggling, right? Also struggling with how do I do this? Believe me, I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years and I still have my own struggles of, what's going on? Should I invest here? Should I invest
Of
someplace
course.
else, in state, out of state? What's happening with the tenants? I still struggle with certain things. And so it's really important to get different people's perspectives on things. So networking at those events, also, social media never existed 20 years ago when I started this. And man, social media makes things so much easier these days. So if you have a question, whether it's real estate or business, if you're going to start your own business or you want to invest in some way, like subscribe to some of these, like either Facebook groups or, social media groups where you can see certain posts come across from people and you're learning and it's not a heavy lift, right? You could be sitting there on the couch, watching TV, having your potato chips and still be scrolling through your messages, and being able to either post yourself or be able to get some education from folks who are
Mhm.
doing what you want to do.
And
I
it's
made
key too. Sorry, I didn't mean to
yeah,
interrupt you. The those people that are interested in these new interests that you have, personal finance and real estate, it's not the people you went to high school with, probably.
yeah,
It's not your cousins, it's not your neighbors. It's probably just not. It might be a new group of people. And that doesn't mean you can't hang out with your old group of friends, but they're not gonna be as knowledgeable and they're not gonna be as
yeah.
geeked about this stuff as you are.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. A lot of my friends and family, I can't really I don't want to say discuss this stuff with them. they just don't have an interest, and that's okay. I mean, there's still
It
good
is.
people.
Yep.
It's just I want to achieve more in my life, and so as I get older, I start to think about like, okay, so I've done a lot of real estate, check. I retired at 44, check. And now I start to think about like what do I want to do?
Yeah.
And you get to that point in your life, which I think this is amazing. And it's unfortunate that not everybody will be able to experience this, or they experience it too late in their
Yeah.
life. It becomes a question of what's going to satisfy me? Like, where's
Yeah.
satisfaction in my life? Um, because I could go start another business, I could go buy more real estate, but is that truly satisfying a need that I have as a person? Or what is it? Do I want to travel more and see more places? I love architecture, right? One of the reasons why I love real estate, I love architecture. So, do I want to travel overseas more and kind of just get that experience? What is satisfaction, right?
Right.
And so you don't necessarily get to that point of really doing that self-assessment until you really at the point of having, so to speak, like you say, FU money, right?
And I
Uh,
have a theory that the longer you're in the job or the career, the more ingrained you are in that and the harder it is to get out of that and really remember
yeah,
who you are deep down, what your values are, what you want, and find fulfillment in other
yeah,
ways. I just have a theory that there's a difference between leaving your job at 34, 44, and
yeah,
54 and 64
yeah.
with finding fulfillment after that. I think the earlier, the more likely it is.
Y-
That's just a
You're,
theory that
you're
I have.
I think no, I think you're so right because it's just reinforcing behavior. You go into a job, you go through the turnstile or you go through the door, and it's kind of like, okay, I'm here for the day for the next 8 hours, or 10 hours, depending on the job. So so it's just kind of like reinforcing behavior of this is what I do. Now, I'm going to share a secret. I don't tell this on many podcasts I go on or with many folks, but so this is something that I did early on in my career. When we go to work, a lot of us put on like a lanyard with our badge attached to it. The lanyard, I
Mhm.
think a lot of the folks know what that is, right? So I would put it on. Every time I went to work, I grab it out of my car, I'd put it on. For me, that was my mental reminder, true story, that I'm putting on a noose every day. Putting on that noose, right? So for me, that helped me stay calibrated with getting certain things done. Now, for some people, some of these things may seem like unsurmountable. Hey, buy real estate. Hey guys, yeah, that sounds great, but maybe you had the money, maybe you had, good deals at that time, whatever, whatever. But start small. Take that in baby steps, right? It's not just, boom, I'm going to buy a deal today. No, let's start taking baby steps. Register to go to your real estate investor club on a monthly basis. Register to go there. Subscribe to some Facebook groups. Start there. These are easy things, right? You know, Maybe get a real estate agent that specializes in multifamily investments, right? Talk to that real estate agent. Say, hey, I'm starting to do this. Go have a cup of coffee with them on a Saturday morning. You think they don't want to talk to you? Hell yeah, they want to talk to you. You're a potential client of theirs. They will go have a cup of coffee with you and talk to you about that and tell you what you need to do, right? So you do these baby steps along the way so that one day you can buy real estate or you can start a business or you can do whatever your dream is. It's not just wham, I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro. It doesn't happen that way. Or wham, I'm going to go run a marathon. It doesn't happen that way. There's many, many weeks and steps along the way to get to that point. So again, just I think another valuable tip that on social media you see too many, especially with real estate, you see too much of Lambos and to the moon, and it's like real estate's a marathon. It's not and not every deal is going to be a slam dunk and you're going to make a bajillion dollars. It doesn't happen that way. It's a
No.
marathon
It's a
and you
little
just
bit
got to
like
complete it.
having faith, to be honest with you, when you're
Mm,
early in your like, it's a little bit like just having faith that it's gonna
yeah,
work out the way the numbers say.
Yeah.
And it takes a few deals before you're knowledgeable and you've built your team and, all of those things. And then obviously you start getting this like equity snowball and you can trade into bigger and bigger deals. But at the beginning, it doesn't feel that way. You just sort of have to have faith that it's going to work out and keep your head down. And then you look up in 5 years and everything's changed. I was also
And
going to say
that's
about,
I'm gonna interrupt you, but because this I think this is an important point. That's why it's so important because it doesn't always feel good. That's why it's important to surround yourself with a good team, a good
yes,
network of people who are doing it. Because if you're not feeling good about it, if something's happening that particular day with your rental and you're like questioning why you
yeah,
did this, and you're talking to that neighbor who said, "Oh, you should never done this," or you're talking to your sister or your
I
brother who
know.
said, "I told you there was a lot of risk," right? It's just going to drag you down. It's so important to
Yes.
have a good group of friends and people who are doing what you want to do because they're going to lift you up. They're going to help you. Hey, you're having that problem, do this. Go talk to that person, right? They're going to help you. In real estate, not to just harp on real estate, business is pretty much the same way. If you're looking to start a business, not everybody's into real estate, so I like to also talk about
For
business.
sure.
It's everybody wants to see you succeed, right? Nobody wants to kick you in the teeth. So yeah, that's particularly why I like the real estate community because everybody's helping everybody, and it's so cool. I mean, I
It
say,
is.
right, if you worked for like the pharmaceutical industry and you went to a pharmaceutical conference, you think those people are going to trade secrets on like, oh, do this with your customer or do this with your branding or your packaging or the amenities that you offer or whatever it is. They're not going to tell you anything in the pharmaceutical industry. That's all trade secret for them. You go to a real estate conference, which I've been to countless, so many, so many. They're going to be like, hey, did you try this? Call this bank, call this
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
Have you used property management? Here's my success. Here's my failure. This is what I did right. This is what I did wrong. They're so eager to share those stories. So surround yourself with the right people, and that's going to help you through the bad times. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to share that because
No,
that's
no
super
problem.
important.
Yeah, the abundance mindset in real estate investors really, really is incredible, and the teamwork mindset, and it's really a special group of folks, frankly. But what I was going to say was just about your 9 to 5 job, your career, and all those things. You may really like it. I had a really great job for a great company where I just fit really well, and I worked there for 7 years, and they just didn't quite innovate enough,
Mm,
and we did in-person training, and I just got tired as a salesperson of having these conversations where they're like, "This is cool and all, can you do it online?" And having to tell people no in 2019. It just was too I'm like, "We have got to do better, guys," right? So I left in February 2020 and then the world shut down and then that company had to kind of do a fire sale. But my point is, you may really like your job. You may like the people you work with. You may like your boss. You may like all of these things, but that can change. Your boss can change, the ownership can change, a pandemic can happen and change the trajectory of that business. And then you may have to go find another job that you don't like as much in some cases, or you may get a coworker that comes in that you don't like, or a boss that comes in that you don't like. And I don't think you have to have the goal of leaving your job. I don't think you have to have that goal. I think you can just start doing real estate, but it's nice to have something else there to give you some security other than your job because things can change in an instant. And I was so glad when the world changed and when my life changed that I had started investing in real estate before that.
mm.
Because I think some people you get in a situation where you have these awful wake up calls. It's not too late. I mean, you can always start in real estate then, but why not start before there's a problem? That's just something that I was going to say.
Yeah, super, super powerful thought there.
So, Tony, this has been a great conversation. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I'm happy to be here. I hope I added a ton of value for your listeners. I mean, if they feel like they resonate with me in some way, I would say just shoot me an email. I'm super happy to talk with people all the time. So just shoot me an email at Tony Lopes at dirtybootscapital.com. So Tony Lopes, Lopes with an S, at dirtybootscapital.com. And I just love to engage with people. And because every case is different. It's like, hey, I want to do what you did. And it's like, well, what I did worked for me because I was in a certain time and place, right? what do you want? You may have a family, right? You may have two kids, right? Whatever the situation is, it's different for you. So it's important to chase your own dreams. Don't try to chase my dreams. Don't try to chase Lauren's dreams. Our dreams are all different. Like, focus on what you want and calibrate to that. Don't use somebody else's yardstick. As I say, my yardstick is different than Lauren's, is different than yours. So we get into these conversations, and you start to feel, I think people leave the conversation feeling better about themselves and what their future holds for them, because now they start dropping all these things of, oh, gee, somebody else is buying real estate and I'm not, or they got a business and I don't. Like, forget that. Focus on yourself, not what other people are doing. And so we just kind of work from there. But I just love having the conversations and talking about this stuff. So yeah, reach out to me there if you want.
Yep. And I have your websites and your socials. I'll put all of that in the notes for the show as well. Guys, follow me on Twitter, X at Adulting is Easy, Instagram at Adulting is Easy Real. If you like this episode, you may also like episode 189, Fight All Day and Make Money, that I mentioned earlier, and 174, Change Your Own Life, Make More and Pay Off Your Debt. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Hopefully, Tony and I have made adulting a little easier for you.